here today on Skype with drummer Kris of up-and-coming prog metal band Irish Divine. I recently reviewed their album Karma Sown on Century Records, and I found it to be a fantastic recording. So thanks for taking the time to talk with We Love Metal today.
Awesome. Thank you. Glad to talk to you guys.
All right. Hey, Kris, the album, although on your own you released it last year, the worldwide release will be the end of this month.
Correct.
So how's it been received by either fans that have already bought it or the media in general?
You know, we really put everything we had into this, and so for us, the response that we've gotten so far has just been really overwhelming. A lot of great positive reviews, positive feedback from our family and our friends. But then, of course, as it starts to expand and it's gone global at this point with the press, reviews from Germany and other places, it's just overwhelming. That's the only real way that I can describe it. Such as your review, people really digging into it and kind of taking it apart and dissecting it. We really appreciate that kind of perspective and that time that it takes to do that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And views have just been amazing. We really didn't expect it like this. I mean, maybe we all had our own hopes and dreams for how it would do.
Right.
Wow. It's all I can really say is just wow.
Okay.
We're really appreciative of how it's doing so far, even before the international release.
All right. Good. Well, that's certainly positive.
Yeah. You know, everyone's going to have their opinions, and of course we're going to have negative reviews and all that stuff, but that happens. And,
sure.
That's part of it. And, you know, we won't dwell on that stuff. We just look at what the positive is and how we can improve ourselves for the next release.
Yeah, as long as it's constructive, I think.
Absolutely.
You can find something else.
I mean, if people want to call me ugly, I already know that. So.
Okay. You guys, from what I heard, you incorporate a number of influences, but not really overtly do you sound like any other band that I could think of. Who do you guys look at for your musical inspiration?
You know, we're all kind of across the board. I mean, we all share the same prog metal influences, you know, Rush, Dream Theater.
Right.
But I think as you talk to us individually, we all kind of spread out from there. And Naveed is kind of more of the real metal guy in the band. Mm-hmm. His list of metal stuff that he listens to, I can't even start the list. So he's really into the metal side, but he also has a real strong pop sensibility. And I make fun of him about it all the time because I'm not a pop guy. But he's really into what is a good, strong pop song. So I guess when you take those two elements and you mix, Brian is more of a, I don't know, he's a little harder one to peg.
Uh-huh.
He's also in the Dream Theater world and that kind of stuff, and he's a Primus fan.
Nice.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said nice.
Yeah.
You don't hear Primus mentioned often.
And it's funny because Primus, even though, and I love it in these reviews, people will say, you know, Neil Peart-esque drummer or whatever. I love that, and he's probably one of the reasons I picked up the drumsticks to begin with, but I don't really listen to him for a creative place or peace of mind. I'm more of a Primus kind of inspired drummer.
Uh-huh.
I just love Herb's style. I love his sound. I love that kick in the throat kind of attitude.
Yeah, he's got a great groove.
Absolutely. And so between them, and then I get a little more eclectic. I like a lot of the electronica kind of stuff, like Massive Attack, Hooverphonic, OSI. So I think when you take all those together and you keep that strong root of prog metal, and then of course we all share love for Alice in Chains, Deftones. So I think when you put it all together, it's a big soup. It's kind of like you're saying, it's hard to pinpoint if we sound like anybody else directly or if it's just a big pot of all of it together.
Right.
And I think the biggest thing for us is we all respect each other's influences. And I don't listen to all the same pop stuff that Naveed listens to, but I understand where he's coming from when he says, you know, we need a strong hook here. You know, I don't listen to the pop stuff. I get where he's coming from, and same from him with me with the atmospheric kind of out there stuff that I like to put in there with the programming.
Uh-huh.
So we all share that same appreciation and respect for each other on that level, which you have to have in a band anyway. Even if you're all on the same page from your inspirations, you can't really stifle people.
Right. Yeah, you almost have to look at it like a compromise situation.
Yeah,
Maybe not compromise, but we'll take some of this, some of that, and
and I think that's a growing thing with any band. I mean, I've only been with the band. I'm coming up on 3 years with them.
Right.
The first couple of months, you're just feeling each other out and trying to see what's going to work. And I think with this band, compromise is probably not the right word because we kind of agree a lot. So compromise comes into play more. Okay, how do we want this song to go from here?
Okay.
As opposed to the overall vibe of what the band is. We all know what Iris is, and where we want to go with it. So then it comes into the details of specific things like this song should be X.
Okay. Yeah. That's great description of that process.
Yeah.
Talking about the album specifically, everybody typically has a favorite track. My favorite song is this. My favorite song is that. It was. I really can't pick one.
Okay, cool.
But somewhere among Mother's Prayer, Prisms, and in Spirals, one of those three, or maybe all three of them, kind of grabbed as a massive track. What's your favorite track, if you can pick one? If not,
I'm not going to use the cliche that they're all my kids, so I can't pick one.
Right.
I think for me, it's probably going to go either to Fire or Spirals. Mm-hmm. Just because I look for a certain mood and a certain way of feeling. Spirals is kind of a weird choice because it's an instrumental, and I love Naveed's voice.
Right.
I think when we were in the writing process, Spirals was the song that really made me feel like we were at that point where, like I said, I'd only been with the band at this point, coming on 3 years. We started writing that song maybe a year and a half ago. So that's when I started feeling like I was really understanding what Iris is about, and what I was bringing to the table was being incorporated the way I wanted. And all kind of came together that way, and then we kind of circled back and applied that stuff to the other songs. So I feel like that song was kind of the culmination of the writing process and us maturing as a band at that point.
Uh-huh.
And I'm personally really, really proud of how the programming turned out on that song.
Okay.
And kind of the same with Fire, even though Fire was probably one of the last songs that I put the programming on, and I wanted to have a different kind of approach to it. And I really, really fought with myself for a very long time to figure out how I wanted to do it. And once I nailed it the way I liked it, then it kind of stood out as a song that said, pat yourself on the back, you're proud of what you did.
Right.
But that said, I love every song on there. Apathy is just a song that's kind of snuck up on us as far as fan reaction. Mm-hmm. Naveed likes to call that our dark horse. So it's a song. It's a very powerful song. I love how it ends with the samples and the instrumentation. I don't know. It gets hard. It gets really hard to pinpoint a favorite like you're talking about.
Yeah. To me, it was just pretty much quality from beginning to end, and that
Thank you.
That was a good thing. That I can't really say, oh, that's the best song.
Right. And then for me, I guess the flip side is what song do I like to listen to the most, and what song do I like to play the most?
Oh, well, sure.
Because I think that's a little different for me, because all the songs have a different physical challenge from a drumming perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So I think probably playing the most might actually be Everlasting Sea.
Okay.
Because that song is just so busy drum-wise.
Yeah, it is.
So.
Okay. I need to ask about the band's name. And I mentioned it in my review.
I saw that.
Metal bands don't have to have evil names
Sure.
or anything like that. And there are plenty of bands out there that, Dream Theater, for instance, Redemption, who I referenced in my review. But,
Sure.
And I know there was a song on the first album called Iris Divine.
Right.
Although I have not heard that album yet. I need to get that. So where did the name come from?
Well, like I said, I've only been in the band 2.5 years, pushing on 3. I wasn't in the band when the name was decided.
Right, but you had to have
I do know a little bit about the story. I know that originally the original 4 members all liked the name Iris something.
Uh-huh.
And I think at one point, I hope I'm not wrong about this, I think it was Iris Decay originally. And somebody in the band said, I don't like that word, I don't like how it sounds. And then someone else came up with Divine, and that's just what stuck. Yeah. So I think that's the story. I never really said anything like, "Hey, now that I joined the band and we've gone from a 4-piece to a 3-piece, we should change it." Because at that point they kind of had a reputation locally, and the music that we were working on was, a natural progression of where they were. So it didn't feel right to change the name, or even for me to broach the subject.
Sure.
And I guess I don't mind the name. I think I understand what you're saying.
It's different.
Yeah. It's probably one of the better names of bands that I've been in. So I don't take issue with the name.
Yeah, no, I don't take issue with it. I don't know. If I'm gonna expose someone else to this band, I don't know. It just might be a little. They'd say that's a metal band.
Yeah, actually,
yeah, it is.
A good comparison there. One of my favorite bands ever is a band called Dredge.
And
they are very kind of, I don't know, if you take Radiohead and Deftones and take all the good elements for both bands and put them together, that's kind of what they sound like. But if you hear the name, are they like Slayer?
Yeah, I would think like a doomy kind of southern,
like a sludge metal.
Swamp. Yeah, exactly.
So, and that's now, in reviews or interviews, they'll talk about that and they'll say maybe we should have changed our name because it doesn't really fit what we're doing. But, I don't know how Rush, the name, really fits the band either.
Well, that's true.
So,
no, it's a brand. I
sure.
mean, you guys are in a business, whether you're making a whole lot of money or not, but I mean you've got a brand and it works. So let me ask some semi-personal questions.
Sure.
Your introduction to music. How did you get into music and metal specifically?
Okay. Yeah. My first memory, I went on a trip with my dad to Arizona and Mexico when I was 3. And he was around his friends, and they were all listening to Rush and Zeppelin. And all I remember was that pounding drum beat to Kashmir and Tom Sawyer. And for the next, 5 years, I begged my dad up and down, I want a drum kit. And finally, when I was in 3rd grade, he bought me this giant drum kit for $50 off of an ad in the paper. And it's the typical Lars kind of story. Every time I would hit the cymbal, it would fall over, or the drum kit, or the kick drum would always move, or there was a weird rubber band on something.
Right.
So that was my introduction to drums. And I haven't had formal lessons, like a teacher just sitting down with me one-on-one showing me things, but I was in jazz band, marching band, all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
In high school, that's when Dream Theater came along, and they just changed everything for me. I've been listening to Van Halen for years, and I was a huge Alex Van Halen fan, but when I heard Pull Me Under, I was done.
Yep.
I spent 2 years, and I learned that album top to bottom, every drum lick that I could, and I just took it from there. And I think the metal stuff came a little later. I had a lot of friends that were into Pantera at the time, Sepultura. I was blown away the first time I heard Chaos AD. And I'm not a typical metal fan. I have my small bag of bands that I listen to, Pantera, Sepultura. I just recently, this is shameful, I just recently got into Testament, finally. I think the biggest thing for me with metal bands is the singer's voice. He has to have this certain tone to it, or I'm just not going to get into it. No matter how good the music is. No matter how good the music is, and it's funny that I say that because I actually really like Carcass. So I don't know how that makes any sense.
Well, their music is certainly at the musically top of the death metal genre,
right,
I think.
Right.
But,
and I've actually started listening to Morbid Angel a little bit from a drum perspective because I didn't realize how cool a lot of the drum patterns are. So I've been using those as some workouts.
Okay. All right. Sounds like you've actually got a pretty diverse set of diverse kind of music collection.
Yeah, and it's interesting because even though drums are kind of what I have built myself around, and I love playing drums, if you put a drum set in a drum set in a room and a piano in a room, I'm going to go to the piano. There's something about the piano, even though I'm not a piano player, I call myself a piano enthusiast. I don't really know what I'm doing, but when I sit down and notes come together the way that I hear them in my head, something just happens, and it's more of an emotional therapeutic thing for me. A lot of people think drums are a stress reliever, but I don't view it that way. I view it as a physical challenge.
Mm-hmm.
The piano is a stress reliever for me.
Okay, nice. I like to ask this question. It's I've gotten some pretty good answers before. What's your most memorable live music experience? Either playing or as a fan.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I'll give one for both. Being in the room, I would say I saw one of the very first Ozfest shows, and it was before he was calling it the Oz Festival, and it got so big. This was in '96, and he was touring with Danzig and Sepultura, and then they had a local band open the show. And this was in West Virginia, and the local band, I don't remember their name, and I wouldn't mention it if I did. They just were not good for a metal crowd. And when Sepultura hit the stage, I didn't realize how much faster they played their songs than they recorded them. Oh my God, what they did to that crowd was just amazing because they had work to do. They really did. Like everybody had kind of scattered because of the local band, and then Sepultura comes on and just blows everyone away. And this was on the Roots tour. So that was just an eye-opening experience for me. And I guess the second one would be the first time I saw Dream Theater because that was kind of a spiritual thing. I had tried to see them for years, and I saw them on the Scenes tour in 2000, and I'd been a fan of theirs for 8 years. So that was just ginormous for me, and I had great seats. And they were my favorite band for such a long time. To finally get there, that was amazing. I don't know, from a playing perspective, do you want good and bad?
It's up to you.
Well, okay, the bad one would be a show that we did maybe a year and a half ago where I had shared my drum kit with a different band that played before us.
Oh, no.
Yeah. This is not going to end well. So we're in the middle of one of our songs. Actually, we were in the middle from the album Suicide Aware. And we get to this kind of unison section where all three of us are playing together, but there's a floating piano over it. And my snare stand with the basket connector bolt just falls off. So my snare stand goes up vertical where I can't even hit my snare at all. And I'm trying to figure out how to play this pattern and not, fall off the samples or anything like that. And that was a very fun experience. Best time playing live, my first show with Iris, not to be cliche, that was a great show because a lot of people thought the band might actually be dead. There was a year and a half of silence, pretty much for the most part, from the band. And it was a great kind of homecoming, small local show. I've played a couple of really cool festivals back in my cover band days, and that's kind of, I guess, weird to mention, but playing in front of crowds like 2,000 or 3,000, doing just a cover band kind of set, that was really cool. Where it's a lot of drunk people yelling and screaming and singing along. So.
All right.
I wish I had better road stories, but that's all I kind of have.
Well, speaking of the road, you guys have any tour plans coming up?
We've looked at a couple options from our management, and we actually have a couple of things that we're trying to figure out if we can do on our own. We would absolutely love to tour this year. Hopefully we can. Hopefully the feedback from the album promotes that and pushes it in that direction. As a band, we haven't been on tour before. I've personally not been on tour myself at all. So that's definitely something we want to look at and figure out how to do.
Yeah, I think you guys have opened for, some pretty good names. But it always seemed to be around the DC area.
Yeah, we opened for Fate's Warning, which was that was an amazing show. Jim Matheos is one of my favorite guitar players ever, and his work in OSI is just insane. So just getting to talk to him was awesome. Playing with The Agonist, that was a really cool show. So yeah, we've done some really cool stuff, like you said, in the DC area, but our goal is to branch out and no longer be a DC local band. It's to make ourselves known on a wider scale.
Sure. Well, I'll do what I can.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Kris, final question.
Sure.
Our website is called We Love Metal. Why do you love metal?
Wow. That's a great question for Naveed. I I feel like I keep going back to cliche stuff. The release. I think the release is the biggest one. When I'm in a mood where I just need to have things pulled out of me and I want to feel good because of the crappy day I've had or bad stuff that's going on, I go to metal because it really just, it reminds me that things are fun. Life is fun, and metal is just, I'm sorry, it's fun.
Yep.
So, if I'm in a crazy bad mood, I don't want to listen to something somber. It's going to make me want to go kill myself. If I throw in Pantera, Fear Factory, whatever, I can get lost in that, and my blood isn't boiling on my own anymore. It's boiling with something else that understands what's going on.
Right.
So I see that as a great release. I see it as a kind of a reset and finding yourself and kind of finding your center so we can hopefully, make better on a bad day.
All right. Excellent answer. No, I didn't hear a cliche in there. So.
Yeah, well, I think starting it with fun is kind of cliche, but that's fine.
Okay. Well, hey, Kris, thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely.
And to all the listeners out there, you need to check out Karma's Sown. It's a fantastic album.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that.
All right. Talk to you later, Kris.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.